8 weeks ago, when I was walking my dog at night, a mysterious stranger came to me, shrouded in a dark cloak, and he said, "You're not gonna believe me, but you have to grow a mustache." And I said, "Why? My mustache is a sorry excuse for a mustache. I should not possibly do this to anyone, my wife, myself, or my audience." And he said, "You have to believe me. If you don't grow your mustache until 5 November 2025, there will not be another Warcraft 3 tournament at Blizzcon. But if you do, there will be." Today, that news has just gone live, which means I can shave this thing off tomorrow. But the news has gone out, so let's talk about it. Blizzcon 2026, which is going to be happening in 2026, is going to have a Warcraft 3 esports tournament held by Blizzard. Let's jump a little bit into the details. But hold on, before I go on, I got an email with information about this and it was embargoed until this news went live. So I have a little bit more info than this news post is actually showing. It's not a lot, but after we digest this information, we can talk about it afterwards. BlizzCon is more than an event. It's a homecoming. It's a celebration of the stories we've shaped, the worlds forged together, and the friendships and bonds that make this gathering so unforgettable. Whether this is your first time attending a BlizzCon or a long-awaited reunion with friends and fellow community members, there's more time than ever to plan and personalize your experience. We're thrilled to welcome you to what's shaping up to be an incredible event. For a limited time, BlizzCon 2026 passes are launching at a special early bird rate, making it the perfect time to claim your spot. This is not an ad, by the way, for me for BlizzCon. I've never paid to go to BlizzCon. I've always been there as a participant, either a shoutcaster, an influencer, you guys love that term, for Heroes of the Storm, or a participant in their esports tournaments. Because I think I played my first tournament at BlizzCon in 2005. And I've been to like 12 or 13 or so. But this is the first BlizzCon since 2023. They were gonna hold a BlizzCon in 2024, but it was cancelled. And 2025 this year doesn't have any. Some years had BlizzCon line, I think during COVID. But this is the first one in a few years. Early bird passes are available from November 7th to Sunday 9th. If you miss the early bird rate, standard passes go on sale. So you've got a 3-day, 2.5-day period to purchase the early bird. Then you can't buy for 9 days, and then you can buy it for the full price. And then you can also pay extra for charity, or you can not pay extra and do your own charity. But $500 for the charity night benefiting Make-A-Wish. Okay, let's skip over a little bit. Anyways, what's in store? Let's take a look at this. So they're gonna have developer panels, an in-depth look behind the scenes, and my eyes wander to the bottom right. Blizzard Classic Cup. Okay. Not a lot of information. The inaugural Blizzard Classic Cup. Inaugural meaning the first and opening cup. So maybe they'll do more after that. I was looking for a little bit more info on other websites. There is none. But I do have a little bit of information myself. I was sent an email. As part of this announcement, Blizzard will also introduce a brand new tournament for 4 of our classic games, the Blizzard Classic Cup. The Blizzard Classic Cup brings Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft Remastered, StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 back to the BlizzCon stage for 2 days of thrilling competition. Community captains will draft all-star teams across these iconic titles to battle for glory on the new Blizzard Classic stage located in the Blizzard Arcade. Let's talk about this. Community captains will draft all-star teams across these iconic titles to battle for glory. That's pretty freaking cool. That is a departure from how Blizzard Esports has been in the past. And just for an example, recently in 2005, when I qualified for BlizzCon Warcraft 3 tournament, we did so via the Battle.net ladder in Warcraft 3. You needed to get top 20 on the European ladder. The 20 players flew to Sweden, Stockholm. The best 6 out of the 20 players in the tournament grid in Sweden, in Stockholm, qualified to go to BlizzCon. This sounds like a different format that they've never done before. So they've gone a little bit, I don't know, they've gone with a different format. I'm very bemused by this because it means that they will have like captains that maybe like know all these players, and then they're going to draft the team. Is that going to be at BlizzCon or is that going to be before BlizzCon? And then what I'm also curious about is, will the people participating in these games, will they go for some kind of like all game discipline aggregate score, Or will it just be, I don't know actually. I guess so. It sounds like that. So, do I start training? Should I start training? Just in case. What do you think? Am I going to be a participant in one of these tournaments? If so, which game? The most likely one is Warcraft 3, but some of you may know I have also participated before in StarCraft 2. And Heroes of the Storm, I've only ever played show matches, but I won every show match I've played. Oh, and another question is, will players that participate in these events, will they be participating in all 4 games at the same time? What's that called in sports? Triathlon? Wouldn't that be sick? If one player had to play in all 4 events. Kind of like a streamer event. Like bro versus bro, that kind of thing. Quadrathlon. Or maybe there'll be like one representative per team, per draft, that does Warcraft, one that does StarCraft, one team that does HOTS, and one player that does StarCraft Remastered. And then like all their scores together comprise the total victory. I played something like that once recently in 2011 for StarCraft 2. I played something, it was a tournament, kind of like quasi-Olympics in South Korea. I represented the Netherlands, and so I remember getting 2nd place in the StarCraft 2 tournament, but the Netherlands getting 4th place anyway because of the performances of our FIFA player. Yeah, IESF, yes. IESF, the International Esports Federation. So if I can participate, I don't know, of course, the rules. I would like to know soon, because I'm very out of shape, and I have 1 year to practice Warcraft 3, StarCraft Remastered 1, SC2 or HOTS. 1 year isn't that long. I'll be 40 by the time Blizzcon is happening, I played my first tournament when I was 17. There might be an age limit for the tournament. Oh, age limit for 100. What are you talking about, dude? Oh, you mean minimum age limit, for sure. Be funny, though. All right, next question. Is it a multi-game discipline? Aggregate score from all 4 games. It's a good question, right? I'm very curious about that. Hope we can get more info. Will I be asked to captain? In that case, I wouldn't need to play. I just have to draft a team. That could be fun, too. What will be the prize pool? And will there be prize pool for players and for captain? And are they going to have casters? Will I be asked to cast? I don't know. And I guess the big question is, the biggest question, what prompted Blizzard to suddenly now start organizing this? Let's talk a little bit about the history of their esports. Warcraft Reforged, let's start with that. In 2020, Reforged came out, and Blizzard created a strategic partnership, an agreement for ESL to hold Reforged tournaments for 3 years. Early on in 2020, they held a tournament, and in front of the developers of Warcraft 3, Thorzane versus Moon desynchronized, because the new graphics and the old graphics were kind of janky in how they were meshed together, so desynchronizations were fairly common. And then it happened a second time. Imagine being a dev on that team. They pushed out the baby too fast out of the womb, too malformed. And I mean, these are not good memories. I prefer to kind of gloss over this. But that was like the inaugural tournament for Reforged. And what ended up happening is that the 3-year partnership was honored into a second year. But I don't know what the discussions were behind closed doors. But it was aborted after 2 years, and the 3rd year never happened. Because I guess neither Blizzard nor ESL particularly felt like continuing to support esports for a game when literally no one wanted to even look at the Reforged graphics and be reminded of some of the damage that had been done. Now, since 2024, new Blizzard, Microsoft Blizzard, or pre-Microsoft Blizzard, I suppose, they had the 2.0 announcement, and now actually Reforged is in a much better state. The bugs are far less, and while everything isn't perfect, much of the broken promises and the broken functionality that was removed with Reforged from the legacy product has actually been restored, including, for example, automated tournaments. And many improvements, modern quality of life improvements have been made. The settings menu, the options menu has been vastly expanded with all kinds of quality of life. So Believe you me, if you've been living under a rock, Reforged is in a much better state than it was in 2020. But that's where Blizzard's official support of esports for Warcraft 3 was left off at the time. So it is a curious re-entry into Warcraft esports. They probably feel like they want to rebrand the image a little bit and leave on a good note rather than the bad note from this agreement and partnership. StarCraft 1. StarCraft 1 esports, it's basically where it all began. The Korean esports organization from South Korea, they popularized StarCraft 1 esports in South Korea. And that became very inspirational for the RTS esports model around Blizzard games around the world. And while there were some skirmishes, legal disputes over who owns IP, as South Korea and Blizzard saw very differently on that, eventually a lot of the influencing power over SE1 esports remained within the rights of Korean companies. Blizzard wanted it differently for StarCraft 2, so they were a lot more aggressive at defending their IP, which is of course completely their right. When StarCraft 2 came out, cooperations with KESPA and other organizations were attempted, but they continued to clash head on creative differences and legal differences. And Blizzard sometimes tried to sidestep wanting to work with KESPA and instead would give their partnership agreement for broadcasting esports to other companies such as GOM TV, who were a smaller player in South Korea, but thanks to the partnership with Blizzard, would gain some of the rights and some of the notoriety around Blizzard esports in Korea in lieu of KESPA. However, sometimes allegedly pressure would be exerted on players not to participate in Blizzard-sanctioned esports events and instead come back to SE1 for players that were able to play both of these games. So there were a lot of issues, and I certainly haven't given the whole history. But SE2 esports outside of Korea was actually very, very successful and actually grew up alongside Twitch. I think Twitch greatly benefited from StarCraft 2's launch and popularity back in 2010, 2011. As some of the biggest Twitch numbers were StarCraft 2 esports. I was still playing Warcraft 3 in 2010, but I would look at Twitch and I would see 100, 120k people watching SE2. And while sadly we haven't seen that much recently, such numbers, it was so hyped back in the days. Some people feel that SE2 never really lived up to SE1's design and magic. And I would say to a degree I'm part of those people. But SE2 is still one of the best engines for an RTS ever built. Still one of the best RTS ever made, despite some of its flaws and some of the slow-moving decisions and design fixes that Blizzard had around SE2, like the Swarm Host episode and whatnot. But SE2 had some great moments, also thanks to Twitch now being there and being able to broadcast the game and its esports to so many people. StarCraft 2 was very profitable and was a very successful game. They had 2 sequels coming out and many esports events. Thousands, literally thousands and thousands of StarCraft 2 esports events. The GOAT of SE2 is not South Korean, surprisingly, but Cyril, a Finnish Zerg player. And he is about as legendary, some would say, as Flash or Faker. It's difficult to say who is more legendary. I'm sure everyone will have a strong opinion, whether it's Cyril, Flash, or Faker. I assume it has a lot to do with which game you followed the most, but I think all 3 of them are nearly superhuman. The legacy they have is nearly unbelievable. They're also legendary. Who's Flash? Flash is StarCraft 1 GOAT, Cyril's the SE2 GOAT, and Faker the League of Legends GOAT. Whoever is better between the 3 of them, it doesn't matter as much, just know that they're so good in their own game. So yeah, SE2, I think Cyril probably earned several $1 million in events. And then Heroes of the Storm. Let's talk about HOTS esports a little bit. When Heroes of the Storm came out in 2015, it clearly was the smaller MOBA compared to League and Dota, and that remained ever so. In fact, they didn't even call themselves a MOBA. They called themselves a hero brawler. It was kind of like a fun, don't take yourself too seriously, Blizzard All-Stars kind of game. Think Mario Party kind of feeling that just brought all the Blizzard characters together in what a lot of people did feel was a little bit of an expensive game sometimes. It was free to play, but Heroes cost like $10. Nonetheless, it accumulated a really strong core of fans, myself included. And although it never became bigger than Dota or League, and perhaps had no business doing so, being so late to the party, coming in 2015, and not being a clear improvement, but instead a rather big sidestep towards a more casual audience with shared experience and less ability for a single person to distinguish themselves and 1v9 against everybody else. Heroes of the Storm did have some esports initiatives. You had organizations such as DreamHack and Turtle Entertainment's ESL. But then soon enough, Blizzard unveiled their own product called the HGC, the Heroes Global Championship. And it had such a busy schedule that there was no space for anyone else to hold a lot of esports anymore and compete against the time slot that Blizzard themselves was holding. This was a further tightening of the reins around the control of the IP and the esports and the advertisement that esports for a game is towards the public. And Blizzard had full control. They had a whole department dedicated to esports within Blizzard, and they were running the HGC ship tightly. And this happened in 2016, 17, and 18. They wanted to make sure that you knew that if you were an esports player for Heroes of the Storm's HGC, that you could be pretty much self-sustaining. And while I think they didn't pay quite enough to be able to make that true, either way, people started to plan their life a little bit around the financial support that you could get from being a participant in the esports of HGC. And they were starting to move house to try and accommodate, such a life and be near where some of the events were being held and whatnot. But then in 2018, suddenly Blizzard shut down HGC, and everyone that had been planning to participate in the HGC's next season suddenly was left high and dry, and they were told, like, sorry, it's over. And this is why many people believe that Heroes of the Storm itself as a game was shut down, because the negative news around HGC was so prevalent that many people accidentally equated HGC as being Heroes of the Storm itself, which is why anytime you streamed or played Heroes of the Storm 2019 or beyond, invariably there would be people in chat that would say, I thought they shut down this game. You can still play Heroes of the Storm, I thought they closed this game. Which they never did, but they did have quite a, for many people, traumatic ending to their own officially organized esports event, HGC. So that's kind of a small, very rough history of what I remember from how these esports events were held recently in the last 10 years for Warcraft 3, SE1, SE2, and HOTS. And that's why it's so cool that after some of these were all aborted before the end of when they were supposed to be. So anyways, a bunch of esports was aborted for 4 different games, but is now brought back in what is hopefully going to be a very positive memory and a cool event. And it's going to be held in September next year at the Blizzcon 2026. I think that's pretty cool. We're going to have to wait for more information to see what exactly they're planning. I don't know if I'm going to be involved in any way, be it as a caster or a captain or a player. If it's player, I need to know soon because I would need to start practicing for real, for real. That's it. BlizzCon 26. Now you know a little bit more. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.